Hello everyone, welcome to GS Core. Today in this session we are going to discuss about environment and ecology, topic detailing for prelims examination. We know that environment has a good weightage in prelims examination. You must have seen previous year questions. On the basis of that, we can safely say that around 15 questions every year on an average are being asked by UPSC from environment and ecology. And that's why this subject can be considered as a game changer, right? So for this subject, environment and ecology, what exactly are the topics that we should study so that we will be able to solve good number of questions from environment and ecology? That is what we are going to discuss in these series of videos. So this is the first video in the topic detailing of environment and ecology. Initially, it is important to understand the syllabus that UPSC has given for environment and ecology. So what they have mentioned in the prelims syllabus of environment. So syllabus for prelims examination. So if you go through the syllabus, you will find that they have mentioned that general issues on first, environmental ecology. That means basic concepts related to ecology like energy flow, food chain, food web, bioaccumulation, biomagnification, then nutrient cycles like nitrogen cycle, carbon cycle, then homeostasis, ecological succession, various kinds of ecosystem, various kinds of biomes that we are going to study that are supposed to be studied are studied under environmental ecology. That is first topic. Second topic that they have mentioned in the syllabus is biodiversity. Right? That means various life forms that we have, let's say in India, various types of species of animals, plants and birds. Then what are the threats that those animals, plants and birds are facing because of human actions? That means the threats associated with biodiversity. Then what kind of efforts are being taken for the conservation of biodiversity, be it creation of protected areas in the form of national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, or be it in the form of species-specific initiatives that are being started by the governments, like Project Tiger, Project Elephant, and these days we have projects like Project Snow Leopard, Project Dolphin and all. Right? So those initiatives are started for the conservation of biodiversity. And also at the international level, we have certain initiatives like the Convention on Biological Diversity, that is CBD. Then there are a number of COPs that are being conducted under CBD, and the latest COPs become important from the exams perspective. Right? For example, in 2022, there was one important COP that led to the global framework on biodiversity, which is also called as Montreal Kunming Global Framework on Biodiversity. So that particular COP which led to this framework becomes important from the exams perspective. Also, apart from CBD, we have other conventions like CITES, and CITES COP was also held in 2022. Then there are conventions like CMS, Convention on Migratory Species. Then we have various important international organizations like IUCN. IUCN has its important contribution in the form of Red Data Book. Then other organizations involved in conservation of biological diversity are also there, like we have Wetlands International, we have BirdLife International, we have Worldwide Fund for Nature and all. Right? So those important topics are supposed to be studied under biodiversity. Then third topic that is mentioned in the prelim syllabus is climate change. Right? So these different topics they have mentioned in the prelim syllabus, and also they have mentioned that general issues on these topics that do not require subject specialization, that do not require subject specialization, right? So this line they have mentioned, but it is these days it is safe to ignore this, because the questions, if you go through previous year questions, you will find that they are quite specific, right? They are quite specific, they are quite challenging, and that's why it is safe to ignore this line. Fine. So that is the syllabus that they have given for the prelims examination. These 3 topics are mentioned in the prelims examination. But if you read previous year questions, if you analyze previous year questions, you'll find that there are questions that are mentioned on the topic called as pollution, though it is not mentioned in your prelim syllabus. Pollution is not there in the prelim syllabus, but there are questions that UPSC has asked on pollution. Let me give you an example. In prelims 2022, in prelims of 2022, there was one question on acid rain. Acid rain. Which of the following pollutants contribute to the formation of acid rain? Now this is a simple question, and that's why most of the students must have addressed this particular question. But there may be in future questions which would be difficult from this particular topic of pollution. And that's why if we do not study pollution for the prelims examination, then it may be the case that we won't be able to address those questions. And that's why, apart from these 3 topics, we also need to study about the pollution, right? And this pollution topic is mentioned in your mains examination. And that's why, just let me write down the topics that are mentioned in the mains syllabus, so that we will be able to get a holistic idea of this particular subject. So let us just briefly write down the syllabus of mains. So what they have mentioned in the mains syllabus? In the mains syllabus, they have mentioned about conservation. Then they have mentioned about environmental pollution. And degradation. Environmental pollution and degradation. And then last topic is environmental impact assessment. Environmental impact assessment, which is popularly called as EIA. Right? So these are the topics that are being mentioned in the mains syllabus. Fine. So see, conservation, we can fit this conservation with biodiversity, and that's why there is no need to study about this topic. Biodiversity and its conservation, that we will be able to fit in the topic of biodiversity itself. So this topic is done. But environmental pollution and degradation, we will have to study separately for the prelims examination, because questions are being asked by UPSC from this topic. Fine. And that's why what we can do, though it is mentioned in the mains examination, it is also important for prelims examination, and hence that would be our 4th topic of discussion: environmental pollution and degradation. Last topic in the main syllabus is environmental impact assessment. Till now, you can say that UPSC has not asked questions from EIA in prelims examination. EIA is a topic that we can safely say that is a mains oriented topic, and that's why it is not needed to study. It is not needed to be studied in the prelims examination. So for prelims, what we are supposed to study? We are supposed to study about, first, environmental ecology, second, biodiversity and its conservation, third, climate change, fourth, environmental pollution and degradation, and fifth, though this topic is not mentioned in the syllabus of UPSC, be it in prelims or in mains examination, it is inherent in these topics like biodiversity, climate change, and pollution. But for our sake, for our studies, we can mention it separately, we can mention it explicitly, and that topic is environmental laws. Environmental laws. And these laws, environmental laws, are extremely important from the exam's perspective, because every year 1 or 2 questions will be there from these laws in the prelims examination. For example, in 2022, they asked question on Wildlife Protection Act. In 2023 prelims examination, they asked a question on the Biological Diversity Act 2002, right? And that's why it is important to study these laws separately, right? See, these laws one can study along with, let's say, biodiversity. In biodiversity chapter, we can study Biodiversity Act 2002 and related amendments. Then we can also study the Act of Wildlife Protection Act under biodiversity itself. Similarly, for pollution, we can study Air Act, we can study Water Act, we can study Environmental Protection Act separately, right? Or they can be studied under the chapter of environmental pollution as well, fine? So these are the 5 topics that we will be able to discuss in our syllabus topic detailing series. In the topic detailing series, we will discuss about these 5 topics. In today's session, we will discuss about the topics of environmental ecology. So let us start with our discussion of first topic under topic detailing series, and that is environmental ecology. So what we are supposed to study under environmental ecology? Let us discuss. Environmental ecology. So this is the first topic of the syllabus. Let us find out what are the important subtopics under this. So here, firstly, it is important to understand what exactly do we mean by environment. What exactly do we mean by environment? Right? Environment, its definition and its different components. Its definition and its different components need to be studied. That is first. Secondly, there is one more term in this particular topic, and it is ecology. So here, it is also important to understand what do we mean by ecology. What is the definition of ecology, right? What is ecology? It is a scientific study of environment. It is a scientific study of environment. Now, as it is a study of environment, this study of environment under ecology can be carried out at various levels, and those levels are called as levels of ecological organization. So, under this topic of ecology, we next will discuss about levels of ecological organization. It is important to study levels of ecological organization. Now, which are those levels? First level is of individual or organism. Individual or organism. That is the first and the most basic level. Now here, under individual or organism level, which topics become important from our exam's perspective? Here, the responses given by individual or organism towards changing abiotic conditions becomes important. Responses given by individual or organism towards changing abiotic conditions become important. Which are those responses? Those responses are primarily four. First is regulate or regulation. First response is regulation. Second response is confirmation. Confirmation. Third response is migration. Migration. And fourth response is suspension. Right? So these are the responses that are shown by individual or organism towards changing abiotic conditions. And these responses are a kind of adaptation only. Right? So these responses are a kind of adaptation only. Fine. And these adaptations can be categorized into three types. First type of adaptation is morphological. That means the adaptations in the structure or in the form of organisms is morphological adaptation. Secondly, physiological. Physiological adaptation. That means in the functioning of the organism, if there are certain adaptations, those are called as physiological. Fourth is behavioral. Behavioral adaptation. Right? For example, the animals living in desert area, they carry out their activities during night time. During day, to escape intense heat, they sleep. And that's why those organisms which are active during night time are called as nocturnal. So it is a kind of behavioral adaptation. Fine. So these different aspects are important under the level of individual or organism. Fine. So that is first. That is first. Now the next level of ecological organization is population. First is individual and organism, and these are the subtopics under individual or organism. Next level is of population. Second now. Second level is of population. Right? Under this level of population, what we need to understand? We need to understand its definition. Its definition, right? And in this definition of population, we have a term called as species, right? What do we mean by population? Population means a group of individuals belonging to same species. And that's why it is also important to understand the definition of species. Definition of species. Fine. So these two are the important aspects under population. Further, there are certain important characteristics of population. There are certain characteristics of population. What kind of characteristics? Characteristics are like density, natality, mortality, dispersal, etc. Those are the characteristics of population, right? So that is the second level of ecological organization. Now the next level is community. Community. Right. So under the level of community, what is studied is different species. Different species living in a particular habitat would be taken into account under the level of community. Fine. And as we are taking into account different species, that means different biotic components, there will be different biotic interactions involved amongst those species, and those biotic interactions become important under community level. Biotic interactions. So basically there are three types of biotic interactions. There are three types of biotic interactions. First is positive interactions. Positive interactions. Second is negative interactions. Negative interactions. And third is neutral interactions. Okay? So these are different types of biotic interactions: positive interactions, negative interactions, and neutral interactions. Now, under these different types of interactions, there are certain important types. What are those? Here under positive interaction we have mutualism. Mutualism. For mutualism, again we have two subtypes. First is symbiotic mutualism and non-symbiotic mutualism, and their examples also are important here. Then second type of positive interaction is commensalism. Commensalism, right? Then under negative interactions we have three different types of interactions. First is competition. Competition. Second is predation or parasitism. Predation or parasitism. And third is amensalism. Amensalism, right? These are different types of interactions that are important from the exam's perspective. So here what exactly we need to study? We need to study about the definitions of these interactions. What exactly do we mean by mutualism? What are the examples of mutualism? Similarly, what is commensalism, its example? And for these other interactions as well, we have to study definition and their different examples. Fine. So that is the third level called as community. Under community, what is important? Under community, the biotic interactions are important. Fine. So that is third. Now next level of study is ecosystem. Fourth one now. Fourth is ecosystem. Now, which topics are important under ecosystem? Under ecosystem, firstly, we have to understand the definition of it. Why definition is important? Because in 2015's prelims examination, there was one question asked by UPSC on the definition of ecosystem, right? And that's why it is important factor. Then we need to understand the components of ecosystem. Components of ecosystem. There are biotic components like producers, consumers, and decomposers. There are abiotic components like climatic conditions, then different organic and inorganic nutrients, and also certain climatic conditions, right? So those we need to study. Further, we also have to study about the structure of ecosystem. Structure of ecosystem. Ecosystem has a peculiar kind of structure. That becomes important from the exam's perspective, because they may ask you which are the different type of organisms involved in that particular structure for a particular ecosystem, right? So that is third. Next is functions of ecosystem. In this ecosystem, number of functions are being carried out. So which are those functions? Which are those functions? I'll write here now. So we are discussing about the fourth level of ecological organization, and that is the ecosystem. So which functions of ecosystem are important from the exam's perspective? First and the most important function is energy flow. Energy flow. Right? So energy flow. So what are the topics that, subtopics that are important under energy flow? Under energy flow, we need to understand 10% rule. It is important to understand 10% rule. Then there are different types of energy flow like food web, food chain first of all, food chain and its types. And its types like grazing food chain and detritus food chain. Grazing food chain and detritus food chain, right? Then there is another type of flow of energy. It is called as food web. Food web. So food web is also important because food web improves the chances of survival. Then we have different ecological pyramids. We have different ecological pyramids like pyramid of biomass, then pyramid of numbers, and the most important, pyramid of energy. Pyramid of energy. Right? So those ecological pyramids are important. Right? Next, under energy flow only, the next topic that is important is bioaccumulation and biomagnification. Accumulation and biomagnification. Because in one of the years, UPSC has asked a question related to biomagnification, and that's why it is an important topic. Okay? So these are certain topics that we are supposed to study under energy flow. So that is first function in ecosystem. Second important function is biogeochemical cycles, which are also called as nutrient cycles. Second is biogeochemical cycles or nutrient cycles. Biogeochemical cycles or nutrient cycles, right? So there are two types of biogeochemical cycles or nutrient cycles. First is gaseous cycles, gaseous nutrient cycles, and sedimentary nutrient cycles. Sedimentary nutrient cycles. So which are gaseous nutrient cycles? Gaseous nutrient cycles are like water cycle, then carbon cycle, then oxygen cycle, and the most important, nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen cycle. And UPSC has asked a question on nitrogen cycle in 2022. One of the steps involved in nitrogen cycle is nitrogen fixation. And nitrogen fixation is carried out through number of ways like atmospheric fixation processes, bacterial fixation, and also industrial fixation. UPSC in 2022's prelims examination asked a question on bacterial fixation. Which of the following plants help in the process of nitrogen fixation? That was the question from nitrogen cycle. Fine. Then there are sedimentary cycles like phosphorus cycle. phosphorus cycle and sulfur cycle. Phosphorus cycle and sulfur cycle. Fine. So these biogeochemical cycles are important from the exam's perspective, especially cycles like nitrogen cycle. Fine. So that is the second function involved in the ecosystem. Next now. Third is the productivity. Third is productivity. So under productivity, it is important to understand first of all primary productivity. Primary productivity. Then under primary productivity, there are two different types. First is gross primary productivity. Gross primary productivity, also called as GPP, and net primary productivity, also called as NPP. Fine. So these are the important topics: GPP, gross primary productivity, and net primary productivity. And the second type of productivity is secondary productivity. Secondary productivity. Secondary productivity. Fine. So these two are the important types of productivities that we must be aware of. Then next important aspect under productivity is the factors that influence productivity. Factors that influence productivity. Right? And then the next important aspect under productivity is the arrangement of ecosystems. Arrangement of ecosystems with respect to their productivity. Right? Different ecosystems have different productivity, and what is their ascending order, what is their descending order, we must be aware of. So that is third function of productivity. Next is decomposition. Next important function under ecosystem is decomposition. Right. So under decomposition, we must be aware of terms like detritus. We must be aware of terms like detrivores, then saprotrophs, then scavengers, etc. Then next is the stages in decomposition. Stages in the process of decomposition. In the process of decomposition. So this process of decomposition involves various stages. What are those stages? Stages are like fragmentation, leaching. Second stage is leaching. Third is catabolism. Fourth is humification. Fifth is mineralization. Those are different stages involved in the process of decomposition. And then last topic is, under decomposition, last topic is factors that influence decomposition. Factors that influence the process of decomposition. The process of decomposition depends on climatic conditions. It also depends on the chemical composition of detritus matter, and that is what we should study under the process of decomposition. Fine. So that is the fourth function under ecosystem. Next now. Next aspects related to ecosystem are, so we are in fourth level of ecosystem. So under ecosystem we discussed its function. Now the next aspect related to ecosystem is ecological succession. Ecological succession. So under ecological succession, it is important to study about the definition of it. What exactly do we mean by ecological succession? Then under ecological succession, at least 4 terms one must be aware of. Those terms are, first, what is pioneer species? What are pioneer species? Second, we have a term called as climax community. Thirdly, one should be aware of seral. What do we mean by seral? And fourthly, it is sere. What exactly is sere? So these 4 terms related to ecological succession one must be aware of. Fine. Then there are different types of ecological succession. There are different types of ecological succession, like primary succession, primary and secondary succession, primary and secondary succession. So what are those types of succession, primary and secondary succession? Then we have types like xerarch and hydrarch succession. Xerarch and hydrarch succession. Third is allogenic and autogenic succession. Allogenic and autogenic succession, right? So these are different types of ecological succession. These we must be aware of apart from the terms that we have already referred to. Fine. And then one more aspect related to ecosystem is homeostasis. Next aspect is homeostasis. Homeostasis. Fine. So homeostasis, here the concept of homeostasis is important, right? And also the examples related to homeostasis. Fine. So these are the topics related to ecosystem. And finally, there are certain miscellaneous terms. Miscellaneous terms that one must be aware of under ecosystem. They are ecotone, niche, then standing crop, then the definition of habitat, the definition of home range, then one also must be aware of ecosystem services, and then there are different types of species, like what are keystone species, what are indicator species, what are flagship species, those terms, and also concepts like turnover. Then the terms like home range we have already written here. So these things become important from the exam's perspective under ecosystem. Clear? Next now. So with that, we have completed our discussion of the 4th level. Let me add one more point under ecosystem and then we can conclude it. Next is types of ecosystem. Types of ecosystem. Types of ecosystem. So under ecosystem, we have 2 types. 2 major types are there. First is natural ecosystems, and secondly, human-made ecosystems. Human-made ecosystems. Fine. So here there are different types of examples, natural ecosystems like forest ecosystem, grassland ecosystem, then desert ecosystem, right? So those different types are under natural, and in human-made ecosystems we have types like, let's say, cropland ecosystem, like farms, then we have aquarium, we have parks. Those different types of ecosystems are human-made ecosystem. So there is a need to study in detail about those different types of ecosystems, primarily natural ecosystems, right? Then separately we can study about aquatic ecosystem. Aquatic ecosystem. Under aquatic ecosystem, firstly, what is important? Firstly, factors influencing aquatic ecosystem need to be understood. Factors influencing aquatic ecosystem. Fine. So there are different factors that influence, that determine aquatic ecosystem, and those factors are like temperature, then sunlight, availability of dissolved oxygen, availability of nutrients, transparency of water, salinity, and all. Those factors influence the composition of aquatic ecosystem. Fine. Then there are different regions. There are different regions in aquatic ecosystem. For example, we have regions like neritic habitat or continental shelf habitat, and also open oceanic habitat. Then vertically we have pelagic level, which can further be classified into epipelagic, mesopelagic, bathypelagic, abyssopelagic, hadopelagic, etc. And at the bottom we have benthic level. So those are different regions of aquatic ecosystem. Fine. And then types of it. There are different types of aquatic ecosystem like lake ecosystem. Lake ecosystem can be studied in further detailed manner, like what are the different types of lakes. There are different types of lakes like oligotrophic, mesotrophic, eutrophic, etc. Then a particular lake can be divided into three parts: limnitic zone, or firstly littoral zone, limnitic zone, and then profundal zone, right? And then we also have other types of aquatic ecosystems like let's say estuarine ecosystem, coral reef ecosystem, mangrove ecosystem, and all, right? So that we have to study under the types of aquatic ecosystem. I hope it is clear to you. Next now. So with that we complete our discussion of ecosystem. Now the most important part, that is favorite of UPSC exams, especially prelims exam, is biomes. So we are discussing about the levels of ecological organization. Fourth level was ecosystem, now fifth level. Fifth level is of biomes. Biomes. Fifth level is biomes. So here what are the subtopics that are involved? Firstly, definition. What do we mean by biomes? Right? Biomes are a larger ecological unit which are characterized by the dominant vegetation that is present in that biome. And that dominant vegetation is influenced by climatic conditions, soil conditions, etc. Fine. So that is the definition of it. Then the next part is factors that influence biomes. Which are the different factors that influence biomes? That is important. Thirdly, we have to study different types of biomes. Different types of biomes. Right? Which are those different types of biomes that are important from the exam's perspective? Those different types are, firstly, tundra biome. tundra biome. Under tundra, we have two types. First is Arctic tundra, and second is alpine tundra. Arctic tundra and alpine tundra. That is first. Second biome is desert biome. Fine. Third is forest biome. Third type of biome is forest biome. Now, this forest biome is the most important, and it can be divided into three types. First is equatorial rainforest. Second type of forest biome is deciduous forest, which itself can be divided into tropical and temperate. Tropical deciduous and temperate deciduous. And then thirdly, we have coniferous forests. Third is coniferous forest. Now, this coniferous forest is itself called as, or it is also called as, boreal forest or taiga forest. Fine. So, that is forest biome. Then we have to study about grassland biome, another important topic. Number of questions have been asked by UPSC on grasslands biome. So, under grasslands, we have to study two types of grasslands. First is temperate grasslands. So, temperate grasslands, their examples are steppes and prairies. And then we have tropical grasslands. These tropical grasslands are also called as savanna. Fine. So, that is fourth one. Next is Mediterranean biome. So, Mediterranean biome is also important from the exams perspective, right. So, these are different types of biomes that we have to study under the topic of biomes. Fine. Now, once this is done, the next topic that becomes important under biomes is Indian biomes. Under Indian biomes, we have forest biomes. Under forest biomes for India, we have biomes like wet evergreen forest, semi-evergreen forest, dry evergreen forest, deciduous forest, which can further be classified into moist deciduous, dry deciduous. Then we have thorn forest. Then the next type of biome is desert biome. This desert biome can itself be classified into two types: hot deserts of Thar and cold deserts of Leh and Ladakh. And then we also have grasslands biome in India. Fine. So, these are the important biomes in India on which UPSC has asked number of questions. For example, in 2023's prelims examination, there was a question on deciduous forest species. Which are the deciduous forest species, and we were supposed to identify from the given species like jackfruit, sal, and one more was there, right. So, that is about the fifth level and the most important level under the ecological levels of ecological organization. Fine. And the last level is of biosphere. last level is of biosphere. So this level of biosphere is not very important because biosphere is often considered as the largest ecosystem. And as it is the largest ecosystem, it is extremely difficult to study it from that broad perspective. And hence, this biosphere is further divided into different types of ecosystems, which we have already referred to. And hence, biosphere level is not very important from the exam's perspective because it's difficult to study biosphere as an ecosystem. Fine. So these are the different topics that are mentioned or that are important from the exam's perspective under environmental ecology. So in this class, we will end with the environmental ecology topic. In the next class, we will cover biodiversity and its conservation. And also, if time permits, we will take up the topic of climate change as well. Fine. So I hope you have understood the topics that we are supposed to study under the first topic mentioned in the syllabus, and that is environmental ecology. Thank you.